Oh, no, he's had enough.
He just left earlier.
We'll be continuing with just the two members of the Hobby Breakfast podcast. If you are looking for a part-time job that doesn't pay anything, please drop us an email at the Hobby Breakfast podcast.
Oh God, are we going to make an email now?
Yeah, well, I reckon a Twitter account is the next thing we need to add to spew our controversial opinions on the world.
You think so? You think all the wargamers are on Twitter?
I mean, maybe we could drop onto Instagram.
Yep.
Have an official Hobby Breakfast account.
Wow.
That's a dreadful idea. It will just become full of your shite memes, OT. Morning and welcome to the Hobby Breakfast Show, kicking off your mornings with Wargaming Chat. Your hosts, as always, this week are myself, Onod. I'm also joined by OT.
Hello.
And the Mayor.
Hello, everyone.
And this week we are going to be taking a look at the Middle-earth strategy battle game expansion books. Is that what they're called?
That's what they're called, yeah.
That's what they're called.
On the GW website, supposedly.
Oh, there you go. And we are going to be talking about which ones we think are best, which ones we think are the opposite of the best, and which ones we think are somewhere in between the best and the opposite of the best. There you go.
Like and subscribe.
Hobby! Oh, Mayor, what have you done?
Oh God, I was hoping we wouldn't start with me. What have I done? I have convinced my brother to paint loads of stuff for me. Does that count?
Yes, for the purposes of this podcast, it does.
Brilliant. In that case, I have painted about 4 kill teams, some miscellaneous Lord of the Rings models, and some other stuff. I guess. Well, they're all currently unpainted, but
okay, interesting.
Yeah, so not very much.
Nice. OT, what have you done for Hobby this week?
I've painted some dwarves and some Dale.
So many dwarves.
So many dwarves. I also finally took delivery of Girion. He disappointingly made it completely intact. So yeah, I mean, I could just sell him on and make a profit, but I think he will be dropping into my Dale list. Hopefully, he'll be painted in time for. I mean, I'm not going to bother dating this; it doesn't really matter. But for in a few days' time, where me and Onod are facing off with our overpowered 350 point lists,
it's going to be really confusing how you said that, because this is going to go up later than we record it, and then that battle report probably isn't going to go up for like a month.
Yeah.
So it's going to just really mess with the chronology of this YouTube channel.
Time is an abstract concept.
We've said it many times before, and really, it doesn't actually exist.
But yeah, I've done some slap chop with actual contrast paint.
Yeah. Did it work better than your patented technique of thinning actual paints?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely more contrast in the contrast paint. Bizarrely, I'm not quite sure why that's a thing.
Paints as water as possible.
I mean, also, it's just so much easier to paint with them because, like, you can just be a bit more slapdash when you're putting it on. But yeah, I mean, I reckon it's at least twice as quick as painting traditionally, as it were. And yeah, if you're painting large amounts of models, I think it's the way to go.
Yeah, it's sort of a blessing because I accidentally spray painted all of my hobbits in black, and at the time I thought I'd completely ruined them, and I'd have to paint strip them all to rebase them in white so I could do loads of fancy highlighting. But actually now I'm just going to slap chop them all, and for that you prime in black and I'm going to do a zenithal and then contrast paints everywhere.
Light work. Onod, what have you done? Cool. I'll try that again. Onod, what have you done?
Sorry, did you ask me and then I fucked off?
Yeah, and then I riffed for 2 minutes. It's okay.
Yeah, that'll make exceptionally good audio for you to leave in because you hate editing.
Yeah.
I've painted more hobbits. What a surprise! Yes.
So many more hobbits.
So many. Here's 9 Turkish hunters.
Wow.
Trademark blue. See, it's all color coordinated.
Yeah.
Pippin's got his little blue cloak, so they're in various blue garments. And I also painted 2 regular Hobbit militia, not Battling Brandy books. Oh god, so many more still left to paint.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've only got a couple of days. You better get a move on.
I don't think I'll do it. Like genuinely, if in that battle report I've painted my whole army, that means that I have painted 21 hobbits in 4 evenings. It doesn't sound feasible, especially when you consider that would include basing and stuff. Like, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah,
we'll see.
We will.
Yes. Wow, that was a hobby section. And
another hobby section for the list.
Slightly lackluster, that one.
Yeah. Lacking in energy.
The trouble is when you have a short recording week and you just had an episode where you hadn't recorded in like over a fortnight. It just not as much happens, does it?
Yeah. We're lifting the sort of magic veil that exists around our recordings.
It's magic.
You know,
shit sense. The shittest sort of magic.
Right, should we get on to the main bit?
No.
Okay. What should we talk about then?
Just waffle.
Aston Villa are winning.
Oh, yes. We probably don't need to get into football, do we?
I imagine there's a huge crossover.
Yeah. I imagine especially our non-British audience would be incredibly interested in that.
Yeah. Good.
Right. Let's do our main topic.
Yes. Which is ranking the source books.
Thank you. I feel like someone else needs to take over.
Okay. Well, why don't we all go from last to best, or should we all do our individual ones and then talk about it?
I think we should start in the middle.
Okay.
Why do you like this?
Then one of us goes backwards and one of us goes forwards, and then we loop back round. So I will go 3, 2, 1, 5, 4. Oh no, wait, there's 6. I will go 3, 5, 1, 2, 4, 6. OT goes. We are gonna have a quick run through now. Before we recorded this, we did some prep work. Unusual, I know. We polled.
That's a generous description.
Yeah, we polled about 300 people in the end.
What? It was not.
I put it up on Reddit. I think it was close to 300.
Oh, on Reddit? Oh, I've only seen the one on YouTube.
Like, the one on YouTube got like 20.
Yeah, that's why I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But what I've done is I've added the numbers from YouTube to the ones from Reddit, and I have created a pie chart, which, as we all know, is the best kind of
this pie chart that you can see here.
Yes, OT will have edited it onto screen. I hope that you've edited it as an actual pie.
Yeah.
That's what I would like a
different pie,
a different sort of pie crust to demonstrate the different
types.
Cups. Yeah.
Okay. I've got plenty of time, so I can do that.
Thank you. Yes, and as you can see, this is what our viewers have come up with as well. Not our viewers, random people from Reddit, and some of our viewers have come up with. I also got some of the comments that people put so that we can discuss there. Now, we are going to be running through our own ranking from 6th to 1st in just a moment, and presumably disagreeing about most of it. Yeah. But as we can see, according to the Reddit community, which I would say is probably a reasonable cross-section of Middle-earth, Warren Rohan is apparently the most popular.
Yep.
Followed very closely by Quest of the Ring Bearer. Very little in it.
Well, spoiler alert, but Warren Rohan was actually my top as well.
Oh, don't spoil it.
Spoilers.
Cut that.
Also, you can't say spoiler alert and then just keep talking.
Yeah.
Do what
spoiler
I want.
alert.
Gandalf dies.
Wow. Jeez. Too soon.
But it should be noted, Gondor at War and Defence of the North are pretty close as well.
Yeah, no, they're all very close. There are two which were much
Not
lower.
so close.
So what is the actual rank? So War and Rohan, Quest of the Ring Bearer.
Gondor at War.
According to the vote, War and Rohan got 87 votes and Quest got 86. So they were very close, basically neck and neck. Very close behind them, again, not much in it, but Gondor at War 82 and Defence of the North 78. And then Scouring got 20 and Fall of Necromancer got 17.
Wow.
Who are those 17 people?
Yeah, very questionable individuals. We'll come back to the pie chart and the comments when we have our broader discussion. I think what it would be good to do, because as one of the people who commented actually pointed out, and I thought it was a pretty reasonable thing to say, most people are probably going to go into this argument with an inherent bias, which is unless you own all of the books, you are probably going to lean towards the ones that you bought because you will have bought them for a reason. So I thought maybe we should say which ones we each own, and then the viewers can see how outrageously biased we are.
Good.
AT, you can start off because you own most of them.
So I've got Defence of the North, Gondor at War, Quest of the Ring Bearer, and that's it. So I only own 3.
Very nice.
Okay.
Mare, what do you own?
I own all of them apart from Fall of the Necromancer.
Nice.
What a show off. And I own Scouring and War and Rohan.
Nice. Either ends of the spectrum.
There you go. So between us, we own all of them. Well, I mean, I guess me and OT need to be here.
Yeah, between just me, we own all of them but the Fall of the Necromancer, which is the same as between all of us.
Yeah. We all own War and Rohan, though, don't we?
I don't.
Did OT know? So no, we don't know. None of us own one all across it. So we're not going to get any useful data from this discussion. Good. But we're going to have it anyway.
Mare owns most of the books, so should we just let Mare riff for 40 minutes and then we can go do something else?
Yeah, we could go.
I think arguably the most important thing about all of them are the legions, and we all know all the legions, so I think that's the most important thing.
You see, that is where I am going to disagree.
Okay, have you used anything in the book other than the legions and the profiles?
Yes, in fact. Okay. If you're including profiles, which you didn't say originally, then I would have.
The profiles are usually included in the legions in the book, so
that's where you're wrong. And I have never played a Legendary Legion, but I have made extensive use of War and Rohan.
Quick Beam,
and
the other one.
Bane.
Yeah, I mean,
and Crabane.
Yeah.
But I'm yet to play with Legendary Legion, so we'll come on to it when we have our discussion.
Yes.
But Mare has clearly set his his stance very clearly, that he thinks that the Legendary Legions are what he's essentially going to be ranking these books on by the sounds of it.
Well, I'm not strictly doing that, but
okay.
My point was that we all know all the legions, and arguably one of the biggest things is the legion
series.
Okay, good. This really is a riveting. So far, we've just got confused.
Can we just jump to our rankings like I wanted to? That gives it some structure.
Okay, let's go on to the rankings. OT just cut most of that, leaving the bit.
Well, I think I might just cut all of it. I think this is where it starts. Should we just do it intro?
I think you should leave in which ones we own at least.
Yeah.
Good. So let's go on to our rankings. So we're each going to start off with our least favourites, the most unbest of them. I think we're probably all going to be in agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fall of Necromancer.
We all say it on 3. Oh, okay. Mez just shot his load.
Mare is so impatient.
He's just like,
let's just get that one out of the way.
Yeah,
why is it? Let's all come up with a reason each as to why it's the worst one.
And then
there's no actual reason for existing. It's pointless.
The Hobbit.
Based on The Hobbit, yeah, there we go.
And it's pointless. And they're extremely niche legions that barely anyone plays. and half of them are, as we talked about in our shit talking episodes, aka the Legendary Legion discussions. Most of them don't need to exist.
The Mirkwood Rangers one I will allow. That one's fine, but the rest of the legions I don't like.
It's not really based on anything, as we pointed out when we discussed the Legendary Legions.
Yeah.
Like, the Fall of the Necromancer is a weird bit in the Hobbit movies, which isn't in the books. It's mentioned in like one sentence in Tolkien's like extended works, as sort of, this is where Gandalf went off to. I think maybe does he mention it maybe at the Council of Rivendell or something? But anyway, it's just sort of a load of waffle. Yeah, it felt like they were kind of like, we've got a bit of time. We can release a book. It's not going to be
something that doesn't matter.
Yeah, but we can do something, and we haven't done anything for the Hobbit, so let's think of something that's not the Battle of Five Armies, because presumably they're going to do that one a bit more fully at some point. Probably, maybe not. Yeah. What else does it contain other than those Legendary Legions? Because we don't own it.
Are there
Probably some rubbish scenarios?
Are there any profiles in it?
No, I don't think there are.
I can't think of any actually. None of the legions have anything new.
I don't.
God, does it? It must have some profiles in.
Don't think so.
Oh, that's awful if it doesn't. But yeah, I mean, it's. I feel like there is at least some a cohesive argument here with us and the people who voted that, like, yeah.
So it has 13 scenarios.
Great.
There you go. A guide to Sauron's return 1,000 years after his defeat at the hands of Isildur, the founding of Dol Guldur, and the event. So basically, like the wiki page from the Tolkien wiki. It has background to a load of armies which were already included in the armies of the Hobbit book. It has the 4 Legendary Legions. It has a painting masterclass for painting Sauron, which you can probably find on YouTube, done better, accessibly. It has a painting guide for the ruins of Dol Guldur. Oh, that's the only thing that was released new then.
Oh yeah, the terrain.
Yeah, and again, please, you go on YouTube to find a painting guide of that. And it has a Forces of Good and Evil showcase, which is some stuff presumably they had painted in the Games Workshop studio. And that takes up 72 pages.
Amazing.
Jeez.
Isn't it slightly cheaper than all the others? Or is that Scouring that's cheaper?
Scouring.
Jesus.
No, this is the
Do
same.
any of the others have painting guides?
Yes. Scouring has the guide on how to build a hobbit hole, doesn't it?
And how to build the traps.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I felt like, I mean, both of those are the smallest books, and it does feel a bit like filler, not going to lie.
I feel like Warren Rohan has a painting guide for the Rohan house, doesn't it? Let me just have a look. Yeah, it's got a little showcase, extra details, stage by stage for the house. So it's not entirely unheard of.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, bringing on to painting, one of the comments on the poll that I put up actually said they wanted more painting guides, and I just want to take this opportunity to say I can't stress how much I disagree with that. Like, maybe like 20 years ago, I'd have been like, yeah, put in a painting guide, that's great content, but who's not just going on YouTube nowadays for something which will be much like describing dry brushing to someone? It would be colossally difficult if you couldn't show them it on a video or in person. So yeah, I personally I think the building ones are a bit more interesting because they show different ways to assemble and stuff, but paint models I don't really rate a book at all for that. Like, it's just not something I'm bothered about.
The only book that I would counter that with is there used to be a scenery book that Games Workshop sold that is probably one of my favourite books to look at just because it has so many cool like little bits in. I think it has its place, but probably not so much in
Fortunately,
these.
listeners who are listening carefully to what I said will have noticed that I said that I was excluding scenery from what I said there. But
Oh God. What is this?
Obviously, I just wasn't listening. So
AT's gonna have a great time editing this, isn't he?
What? This always happens on the ones I have to do. Literally, like the 100 sub one was so slick. We just rattled through it, no
I
problems.
know, and the one that I edited last week was like the best, like most natural chat we ever had, and then this one is just.
There was a fair amount cutting in the 100 sub, not gonna lie.
I mean, there's always a lot of cutting, but yeah.
Right.
I look forward to them digging them up in about 1,000 years from the landfill site that presumably Games Workshop will have to dump ones they didn't sell into.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, shall we move on to what we all think should be 5th place? And I think if it's a 2-1 vote, we can agree that that's the one. And if it's a 3-way tie, then we can argue about it.
Perfect.
I think all the rest of the 5 are good. It's just which one we like. OT, you can start us off. What's in 5th for you?
Fence the North.
Okay. I also have Defense of the North in 5th.
So do I. What a coincidence.
Hooray.
Wow.
Whoa. And this is where we're going to presumably look like massive hypocrites. Because we just criticised a book for not having new profiles and uninteresting legions. And
I mean, I don't think there's very much interesting about this book personally.
No, I'm not a fan of this book.
I think there's new stuff, but none of the new stuff is. I mean, I love, well, obviously not as much as OT, but I do love dwarves, and I didn't really care for the profiles very much, or the legions. Don't really care very much about Dale. OT collects bloody 2 of the factions in this book, and he's put it in 5th, so that must tell you something.
He collects one of the factions in this book. He doesn't collect Erebor Reclaim, does he?
Not yet. When I win the lottery, that's what I'm expecting.
Well, you'll be happy to know that I actually have Old Dane and Young Thorin III, or whatever he is. So we could do another doubles tournament with that. Yay!
Right. I think you got them from Games Workshop China, didn't you?
Yep, those bloody amazing Chinese Games Workshop.
Yeah, love them. Problem with this book is like there are new profiles in them, but it just didn't feel like a lot of thought really went into them and like how the whole book went together. Because like some of the legions and profiles were like game changing, and then some of them were Razgush and like the Dale Legendary Legion and stuff, and like.
I think we're being I think a lot of thought went into the book. I just think that some of that thought wasn't spread around as much.
Oh yeah. I'm saying like some of them were maybe better implemented than others. Perhaps is what I'm saying. But like it just didn't feel like any care went on a lot of the stuff in this book, and a lot of it was focused on the Easterlings and the Bears.
Now, scenario-wise, I think the scenarios are a lot more interesting. Obviously, like creating something out of what little is written about the War in the North. It does highlight something that we've mentioned before, but the lack of the elves getting any attention other than one new profile and being included in the narrative side of things, which is a bit of a shame. And this one would probably be higher up, I think it's fair to say, if some of the legions which, you kind of forget exist weren't there, and maybe the elves have got a bit of something.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything else in the book? Anything worth mentioning that you two would say is good in it?
No, I feel like we've talked a lot about the legions in this one, and like, I personally don't really like it. I don't think it's. And Full of Necromancer is in its own tier of like that book shouldn't exist. This one's okay, but I don't like it.
I think the main issue is so much of it, a bit like Fall of the Necromancer, kind of is made up. I know that a lot of it is based on lore that happened, but a lot of it is like taken from a few lines from Tolkien, and then they've expanded on it. And I think inherently, as people who love the Lord of the Rings, we've grown to maybe be quite skeptical of how people interpret those things, and if it doesn't feel very Lord of the Ringsy, or it just feels a bit made up, then we take more of a dislike to it than something else. As already shown, the top 4 books already are 100% going to be Lord of the Rings books, as opposed to The Hobbit.
Do you think we've now kind of reached a point, though, where there isn't anything really left for them to cover that wouldn't be making stuff up? Because even like the one that everyone thinks they're going to make, the Last Alliance, there's not actually that much written about it.
No, but I mean, I don't know what they'd get 2 legions from it, obviously, good and evil. They would have to make up stuff if they weren't just doing 2 legions. But I mean, Scouring has just 2 legions, so why not do something like Scouring? Make it smaller, more base round theme. Like, it doesn't have to have lots of new stuff in it. Scouring the Shire is kind of evidence of that. And personally, Scouring is quite high up for me in terms of books. So, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get on to Scouring when we reach it, I guess. Yeah, I think for me the overall thing that makes Defence of the North feel less good, as it were, is, and I think this is going to be something when we get to the other books that I want to kind of pick up on. But I think the books that do really well are ones where they have like a really good theme based around just a couple of armies. And by building the armies to access the theme, you unlock the legendary legions. Whilst the reason why I think Defence of the North and Vanquishers is low down for me when I actually unpick it beyond just the bias towards Lord of the Rings rather than the Hobbit films is I think Defence of the North feels more like one of those
some miscellaneous legions.
It feels more like one of those 40k expansion books where they include a rule for every single army so that everyone has to buy it. But no one actually feels like they've got anything out of it beyond that one rule. Whilst I think the reason why the other ones I like more is because they feel more like the equivalent of like an army book, and it's like if you're
almost a film book. Some of them, like War and Rohan's basically 2 towers. Gondor at War's Return of the King, and Quest of the Ring Bearer is basically Fellowship.
Exactly. So you feel like just from building the collection, then like the book unlocks itself. So I think having now sort of gone through those 2, shall we probably start to get to the bit where we will have some disagreements?
Yep.
What is everyone's 4th favourite? May, you can start this one.
So I love all 4 of these books, and for me it's really close between all of them. But for me, it's Gondor at War. That's because I personally don't collect any of the armies in it apart from the Return of the King, which, as we talked about, is the best legion there is. And I think that does a lot for the book. I think the Legion alone beats out the other 2 books for me. If this book was just that Legion, I'd probably put it above the other 2. I don't personally use any of the other things in there, but I think they're well balanced and great for collectors, so that's why I put that in 4th.
OT?
I've got Scouring here.
So
it's a perfectly good book. Like, doesn't do anything wrong. Super themey. For me, it is just slightly too niche. As I'm like, I maybe that's not a valid criticism, but like it.
I think objectively, you're right. I think Scouring. If I was looking at this from everyone's perspective, it would be Scouring in 4th. What about you, Onod?
I also had Gondor at War.
Interesting. So our podcasting bias is going to end up taking Scouring higher, unless OT can do some hardcore convincing.
So it's okay. I'll be heavily arguing for why Scouring deserves to be higher later.
Okay.
Why is Gondor at War this low down for me? I think it's simply because it was in the unfortunate position of being released first.
Yeah.
And so it misses a few things which I think then the later ones learnt from. Like the Legendary Legions don't feel quite as like they don't feel like they do as much. Like we've discussed before, how a couple of legendary legions are kind of like, you almost feel like you aren't really taking them over the army list for a specific reason, kind of thing. I like that it is like in the film thing, and like Mare was saying, like it is quite difficult to separate it out. I think one of the things which holds a book like Gondor at War back for me is how many people are actually going to be able to access all of the content.
Do you mean because it's like I mean, Minas Tirith and Mordor are kind of very big armies, but you've also got Rohan in there.
Yeah. What I mean by this is say, for example, you buy a book, and I think it's fair to say that when you are buying a rule book, you're probably only ever using like a fraction of that book.
You mean like, a source book?
Like any book, like you might read it all and get enjoyment from that, but how many pages do we actually use when we're playing the game?
Yeah, okay.
And I feel like Gondor at War, how many people are actually ever going to be able to play all of those scenarios, the narrative scenarios? How many people are actually going to collect all of those legendary legions? And this is something where I feel like for me, what differentiates out the source books is the really good ones feel more like I'm going to get use out of every part of it, whilst the ones that I then have lower down, I feel like I'm not so much getting as much use out of it, and that's how I have chosen to rank them.
But if you're talking about scouring, and you're talking about the number of people who are going to get value from it, I would then argue that scouring goes bottom.
I'm not saying
niche armies.
I'm not arguing it from a how many people will get use out of it. I'm arguing from the people who buy it, how much of it will they use?
But then surely you want more people to be able to get value from a better book.
Potentially. My counter would be that everyone should collect hobbits. And,
right. But then everyone would go insane and they would be bankrupt. Like,
my point is that we're talking about a niche within a niche, right?
Yes.
Wargaming is a very small niche within wider gaming and like tabletop. Middle-earth is a tiny niche within that. And then you don't actually need these books, you just need an armies book. So we're within a niche of people who want to go so far deep that they're either really interested in doing the narrative or really interested in the competitive. We're in such a small niche, none of these books are actually going to therefore be that useful to that many people. And arguably, most people who are buying these books are either going to be the sorts of people who just buy them for the sake of buying them, buy them because they play one specific army that they're so invested in that they want to play with.
Definitely not me.
Very, very small amount of that book which is invested. And I just feel like if you're providing for a niche, you should provide a book which the niche of people who want it are going to be able to fully use that book. I find a little bit... I just find it a bit disappointing, like when I buy a book and then I only actually really need 2 pages out of it. I'm like, that could have just been a PDF.
I feel like this argument could be made of all the books, though, to varying degrees. This one's just very slightly worse than the others.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not going to collect ruffians on Alt, and that's half of scouring.
And the same goes for like War in Rohan. Like that's Fangorn, Rohan, Isengard. Like the same goes for pretty much everything.
Well, we'll get onto those and why I think that they do a slightly better job than Gondor at War. Why do you two want to go into why you've got your choices where they are in a bit more depth?
Like I said, as at the beginning, I think scouring is just too niche. I mean, it's a perfectly good book, and for the people who collect those 2 armies, I think it's like perfect. But I think it just doesn't have the sort of broad appeal, and also like the legions, we ranked both of them in the bottom 2 tiers. So like, I think there's quite limited value to be gained from the book in that aspect. I think the theme of it is great, and like if that's what you're going for, that's fine. But yeah, I think it's just a bit too niche.
I think if I'm being objective, I would agree. But I think Onod and I have a slight affinity to hobbits, unfortunately.
And to be clear, I've got Gondor at War next, and I actually agree with a few points that you guys have made. So I think Gondor can go fourth if it needs to. I think that's fine.
Okay, well let's put Gondor there then. This is our personal ranking, so it sounds like we're pretty close anyway.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you've got Scouring next, have you, on number 3?
Well, so I had Gondor.
Sorry, you have Gondor next.
But so yeah, I mean my next one, and to be honest, I thought those were fairly interchangeable. It just depends what you're after. So yeah, my next one is Scouring.
Okay. Onod, what's your next one?
Hang on, OT means his next one is Gondor at War.
But as in, so I've now adjusted it for what we're saying here. So like,
we don't need to adjust it. Let's just all do our own individual ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep it consistent.
Yeah. Okay. In that case, my next one is Gondor at War.
Okay. I've got War in Rohan at number 3.
No. I've actually got Quest of the Ringbearer at number 3.
Wow.
No.
But the ones that we've got left are, well, I mean, we're all going to have to make our arguments at this point, aren't we?
Yeah.
Oh god, I was really hoping it'd be a 2 on 1 situation.
About our top 3 and the order we've got them in.
Okay, you might have to put a slide up so that people can visualize it.
The problem is, I feel like now we're going to end up discussing all of the books because we've
that's fair. Top 3 then. I imagine you can just like superimpose the books on top of the background image.
Sure, why not?
To give you some work.
You're welcome.
So number 3, War in Rohan. Number 2, Quest of the Ringbearer. Number 1, Scouring.
No.
Yeah.
Number 1, Scouring. Wow.
Yeah. I will explain.
Okay. No. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. So
I'm not asking people to agree. I'm just saying my own personal opinion.
Okay.
Wow.
I think that's quite a brave decision.
It's a bombshell, isn't it?
Yes, I'm currently making a quick slide with our decisions.
Why I'm wrong.
Yes, I'm making a PowerPoint presentation on why you're wrong.
It's
OT. What?
2-hour TED talk.
What are your top 3?
You're doing it at the bottom. So my top 1 is Quest, and like you're gonna need a lot of convincing to get me to take Quest off the top.
Okay.
War in Rohan is 2nd, and Gondor at War is 3rd.
One round and Gondor at War. Okay, and my top 3 are Quest in 3rd. So we've all got that. I think we've all got them all in completely the opposite
orders.
Orders.
Perfect. It provides the ideal argument.
So, yeah, interesting. God. Okay. Well, why don't we each make our individual arguments and then we can just discuss.
Quest of the Ringbearer is such a good book. it's ridiculous. Like the Fantasy Fellowship stuff is so good. The thematic campaign, the Link campaign, is amazing. Its legions are good. Like it's got the Black Riders. It's got
Lurtz's Scouts, which lets it down.
I did put that in my arguments. To be fair, it's got Lurtz's Scouts, which lets it down. It's got Breaking of the Fellowship, which is a great legion. Yeah, like I don't know. I think as an overall package of what I think the expansion books should be, I think it can't be beaten. War in Rohan is great. It's actually got the like highest average ranking of our legions in. So like from our legion tier list, like War in Rohan's got the most ones up near the top.
Oh, right.
And like it's got Assault on Helm's Deep in it, for instance. And all the other Rohan legions, as we commented at the time, were getting like fantastic solids. Like I don't think it does a whole lot wrong at all. And then I think Gondor at War is the one I'm least attached to here. Like I just don't think it does anything wrong. It's got some nice legions in, like Return of the Kings in here, Rise of Theoden's in here. Like those are 2 of our favorite legions. It does have some whiffs in there, obviously, as well. But like, yeah, I think for the first book that was released, it did such a good job of like setting up what legions are. And I think obviously they've been expanded on since then, but I think it did really well.
And obviously we've already technically ranked Gondor at War, so I'm going to put a little scouring the Shire next to Gondor at War, because that'll have to be what's actually ranked there. But because we're now ranking the top 3 out of 3, as it were.
I don't think we're going to be able to come to a definitive.
I don't think we will. We've literally all got them in every different possible place.
We can agree on the 2 worst, though. That's fine.
Yeah. And the rest is semantics.
Yeah.
Right, who's going next?
I don't mind going next. I feel like Onod's going to have to argue pretty strong for scouring being one. So I've got Quest for the Ring Bearer in 3rd here, opposite of OT. I personally just don't find very much use for this book. I admit that the custom fellowship thing is super cool. It's not something I think I'll ever end up doing, unless we, for some reason, make one.
We probably will when we inevitably run out of ideas. So don't throw shade.
This in 3 years' time.
As I collect Isengard, I am extremely disappointed in Lurtz's Legion, and that knocks it big time for me. The Fellowship Legion is nice. I do have Fellowship. I played it before it had a Legion, so I'm happy that they've got a little bit of something there. But other than that, I mean, what other Legions are in there? I actually can't remember.
The Black Riders.
Oh, the Black Riders. Black Riders is pretty good.
Cirith Ungol, Moria.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, I do like all of the Lord of the Rings books. For me, it just is below Scouring and War and Rohan, because Scouring for me feels like a safe place. It's just quite wholesome. Hobbits everywhere. The Hobbit Legion's just fun. It's just a bit of innocent fun, isn't it? Like there's something comforting about Lord of the Rings for me, and that's kind of embodied in a lot of ways in the Hobbits. You know how you see people online being like, wanting to basically live in a hobbit hole and be a hobbit, because it's just a very comforting thought, and that's why Scouring's second for me. I like the quirkiness of the legions. It's easy enough.
Put both of the legions very, very low down on our tier list.
Yes, because they're expensive, which that's something that I haven't ranked them particularly strongly on. But in terms of as an overall legion, if you're trying to be competitive and all that, it's not great. But I think the legions are fun, and in the context of this book, I suppose you could almost treat the book as its own thing. It's got everything you need for hobbits to fight Sharky's ruffians, and they're kind of equal. I feel like hobbits win out just about, but I mean that's how you want it to play out. And I like that it's almost its own little meta in a vacuum.
Yes.
So
it really does exist in its own little world, doesn't it? And
it does, yeah.
I think like it ultimately comes down to whether or not that's a world that you're interested in. And I think it sounds like you two are interested in it, and I'm not, which is why I've put this one much lower down. But
and that's fair.
Yeah. I think if you're in the market for this, no book can beat it. So I suspect that's what Onod's going to say.
Yeah, I think based on you putting it in 4th, I think it's not going to be able to go first. It's going to have to be 2nd or 3rd. But we can get to that in a minute when OT makes his case. I mean, Onod makes his case. And then War and Rohan for me is top, because Two Towers is my favourite book. Isengard's my first army, and I love it. I have Rohan now as well. So and planning to get Fangorn as well. So there's basically everything in this book I can use personally. The scenarios are pretty cool, and it's just the coolest movie for me, and everything in it is true to form. All the legions are fairly well ranked by us. I think as an all around book, there's nothing really wrong with it, which is sort of I feel like there's at least one thing wrong with all of the books, and I can't really fault this book at all. So that's why I've put it in first.
Cool.
Come on then, Onod. Why scouring first?
Well, I'm first of all going to address the inevitable criticism that OT is going to raise, which is that it's too expensive, and he's going to say that it costs too much money, and that you have to buy all those metal ruffians and hobbits. And fair enough, I acknowledge that. I also acknowledge that, as he says, it is a niche. Not everyone is going to be interested in it. Not everyone is going to necessarily want to, do it. I am going to, though, argue why I think that actually people should want to do it. And that's where I'm going to base it. Before I get to that,
so you're not arguing the book's good. You're going to change people's perceptions and make the book good that way.
I'm going to just blow this conversation wide open. I'll start off, though, with my number 3 and my number 2. Number 3, War in Rohan, is a fantastic book.
Yeah.
It adds loads. It has great narrative. The reason I really like War in Rohan and why I rate it slightly higher than Gondor at War, because, again, I do like Gondor at War. I'm not saying that I don't. War in Rohan is more focused, and I think that makes a source book better, in my opinion. The reason why Mayor likes it is because Mayor is inherently biased because he collects the armies in it. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think that we should be looking for a book that's an all-rounder, because I don't think that we should encourage everyone to buy every book. I don't think that's the point in an expansion book. They're expansions. Buy the expansion you want. So I don't think that you have to aim them at being all-rounders, which I think is kind of where OT's leaning. And War in Rohan is great because if you collect Rohan, once you have built up a Rohan force, you can pretty much access every single legendary legion. Like if you want to play, your foot Rohan, then you have options. If you want to play mixed, you have options. If you want to go and buy, what's his face, fucking Hammerhead Shark. You can just throw him in with your regular Rohan collection. Suddenly you have his Legendary Legion. Yeah. And I think that's great. It gives you loads of options. I think that's really good. And it's similar for Isengard. If you collect all the different components of Isengard, you can suddenly access the different Legendary Legions. And you've also got the Dunlendings, which I think is a nice little extra that they kind of didn't need to throw in, but they have done. And then obviously for me, I've got the slight bias that I like the Ent stuff. I wish there was a little bit more, but I appreciate why there isn't. The reason why I rate Quest slightly higher is because I just think that you gain more usable stuff in that book, and the people who are interested in doing that narrative stuff, you just get so much content. And I think because I think I would still rate Quest in the top 3 if it didn't have the fantasy fellowship. If it was just the Legendary Legions, if it was just the cool narrative scenarios, I think that it would still be up there. I think that I'd be, maybe not expecting it to cost as much as the other ones if it didn't have the fantasy. So, it helps pad out the page count a bit. But I think just having that bit of extra content, and that then allows people, to bring models into it and use their own stuff in a slightly more creative way. I think that's really good for people interested in that. Scouring, though, is the definitive best source book that they have made because of the very thing that you two have been criticizing it, which is that it's self-contained. That's why it's so good.
I don't think I critiqued it for that.
It was one of the things you dinged it for. You said that it's too niche, but I think being niche is good.
That's different to being self-contained. Like something that's self-contained can still have a broad appeal. My criticism of this is its appeal is too small.
Its nicheness and its self-containedness alongside each other are still good things, in my opinion. OT doesn't like
fun.
That is true.
Happiness, joy.
He doesn't like that the hobbits and the ruffians are expensive to buy, and I somewhat agree with him in a vacuum of if you're trying to build a 1,000 point ruffian list, like fucking hell, remortgage your house. I agree from that perspective. If you want to buy enough ruffians to access the book, you only need 24. because
to do the scenarios.
Because none of the scenarios go beyond 24. And if you want to play the hobbits, you're only going to need about 36 because you need about 12 of each kind of hobbit. And actually, when you start looking at it from less of a I'm going into this trying to build a 1,000 point legendary legion, and instead you go into this thinking, I want to play the campaign, this is the most easily doable book where you can access all the content. You can actually play the scouring, like the whole campaign. You could actually do it. Not many people are going to actually ever do the campaigns for all of the others. It's just not possible unless you're like a big YouTuber who can afford to own every single army, or you play in a club where everyone has all the models between them and you're then willing to do that rather than doing something else, which I don't think that many places are going to do. Most of these books have all of these great scenarios and this narrative that's been put together that no one is ever going to use. But scouring, you actually can do it. And it actually ends up being the cheapest source book because you don't actually need to go and buy 1,000 point ruffians list. You just need a very small, like 300 point ruffians list, really.
But I mean, that ruffians list would still cost you, I reckon, 120 plus pounds.
Okay, yeah, sure. No, I'm not saying it would be cheap.
But then, like, I think
you need to spend on a Rohan list to play every scenario in.
Well, what about Quest? Like, I think Quest is quite doable.
You would need to spend more on Quest.
I don't know if I agree.
You would.
Why? Because you can buy the Fellowship for 30 quid,
because
and then
you need so much random crap.
But I mean, you need
a lot of random stuff for the scenarios.
I need a Uruk-hai army. I need an Orc army. I need
Black Riders.
Black Riders. I need to get some Dead Marsh Spectres. I need a Ring Wraith on a horse. I'm pretty sure I need some Rangers of Athelion at some point. I agree. You can probably do most of the scenarios with just the Fellowship because most of them are just some hobbits and like 5 guys. But if you want to do the entire linked campaign, you are going to need to buy an awful lot of random crap. And the book doesn't reward you for buying all that random crap. You can't use your Dead Marsh Spectres in anything other than the one scenario that they're in. Meanwhile, scouring rewards you for actually playing the campaign. Because if you view the books like holistically and you don't view it as I'm buying a book to buy Legendary Legion, if you view it as I'm buying scouring to play the campaign, I'm going to paint up 2 small forces of hobbits and ruffians. I'm going to have a great time playing through that campaign. It then rewards you because at the end of it, you get given Legendary Legions, which let you use your models outside of the book. And that's how I think you should view Legendary Legions. I don't think that we should be going out and just buying a book to use 1 page of Legendary Legion. I think that the Legendary Legion should be a reward for people who want to collect the forces because they want to, actually play the stuff in the books. And I realize that most people are not going to view Legendary Legions like that because most people, I think it's fair to say, play more kind of the competitive match play side of stuff. They just want to collect their force. And so if they want to theme their army around one specific thing and it fits into Legendary Legion, they go buy that book for that legion. But what I think is nice about scouring is the Legendary Legions are like a bonus. They're like, here's something you can now do with those models.
I don't feel like you can use it very much outside of, playing against ruffians, though.
You can use
playing themselves, basically.
No, you can use the Legendary Legions. They're not going to be good, but I don't think they need to be. I'm not asking for hobbits to be every army because I don't think they should be every army. I think that some armies should be fundamentally worse because they are fundamentally worse.
But then also, if you want to start using them at tournaments and you want to go up to like 700 points,
again, most people don't play tournaments. I don't think that we should be so competitively focused. And I realize that, most people on YouTube, like our own YouTube channel, we get more people viewing the stuff where we put like tournament in the title or a bat rep. Do you know something Games Workshop did a poll a few years ago? Do you know that most people who buy Games Workshop models never actually play a game?
Really?
Most people who go out and buy Games Workshop models never actually use them in any of their games. Most people could not give a flying fuck about the tournament scene. They think they do because in their minds they're building an army, and in their minds they want to be competitive, and in their minds they want to play these games, but they're not actually doing it. And I think people who buy War in Rohan in their minds think that they're going to play the campaign, but they're never going to play the campaign. And
I don't know if everyone's thinking that.
Well, no, but I think there's a certain idealistic quality to wargaming where people think one day I will do this.
Oh yeah, 100%. I've bought loads of books where I've never ended up collecting the army because I just thought in my head, oh, this would be cool to collect. Buy the book, 2 months later, I've forgotten about it.
Exactly. And it's like, so I think so much of it is that idealistic, and that's why I think YouTube wargaming is like they get the views they do because, and I said this before to OT, people want to live vicariously through others. And that's why I like Scouring, because when I look at my War in Rohan book, I look at it and I think this is really cool. I'm never going to do it. I own this book for 3 pages so that I can use Microbane, so that I can use Quick Beam, and so that I can use Beachbone, who doesn't even have a fucking model. So, you know, I probably didn't really need that page. That's why I own that book. I bought a £32 book to flick through it once and then to open it up on the same page, which has its little red marker on every time I play my Ents. That's what that book's purpose is. The reason I like Scouring is because I am building towards it and I'm actually going to be able to use that book and actually experience what that book has to offer. And that's why I think it's the best one.
I think sorry, go on, Mighty.
It depends what you mean by what a book has to offer, because a lot of people, and like on the poll, I suspect a lot of people would argue this, and I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm saying a lot of people would argue what a book has to offer is like a competitive army list or a new competitive profile and things like that.
Sure.
And like I suspect that's why it got bashed as hard as it did in the poll, perhaps unfairly, and it's probably why Defense of the North did as well as it did, because that really shook up the competitive scene, didn't it? So like,
I think for the 5% of people who play Middle Earth that go to tournaments regularly, who probably frequent the Middle Earth Reddit, then yeah, that probably is what they're after.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that actually that's what most people are after. And I imagine that a lot of people that will watch this video will disagree with me, because again, probably the people who actually go and buy this stuff aren't necessarily the people who will go and watch a hour-long rant about why we like certain army lists. But that's why I personally think Scouring's better.
And I think like what you're saying about Scouring and like the reasons you like it, I think for what you want from a expansion book, it sounds like Scouring is like absolutely perfect. But yeah. I think the criticism I will stick to of Scouring is I just think it's a little bit too niche. But like,
I'm perfectly happy to accept that like this is all subjective.
Yeah.
Like everyone's looking for a different thing. It's like if we very quickly just have a look at the comments for what people want. Because I asked people, and a few very kindly did comment.
Shout out
what they want. And the comments all demonstrate that everyone wants a different thing, which I think is why the books therefore have to cater to different things. One person says, strong and fun legions, custom photo campaign, all the narrative stuff, a solid supplement overall. They then put Rohan, War in Rohan was a close second because they like the siege rules, like something we haven't even discussed because we're never probably going to do a siege. But for this person, they like doing sieges. Another person said, cover to cover ring bearer, because they got legions, new profiles, and the narrative campaign and the fantasy fellowship.
I just want to point out that one wasn't actually me, even though it is literally what I just said.
Yeah. One person said they like Gondor War because they got a load of new Forge World models for characters. Something that we haven't even really discussed, but like people liked it because it had it. One person said that they didn't answer it because Battle Companies was their favourite, and they said, I understand why you haven't included it, but I like playing the smaller games, and that's what they're after. And another person
just
said,
play like a 50-point game with no heroes.
Here comes the their Battle Company Salt. It's back again.
But like, do you see what I mean? Like, it's so subjective. One person who we've already mentioned pointed out that everyone's just going to vote for the ones they own because you just vote for the ones that you collect. And I think that OT's made that point, and fair enough. Like, I probably do like scouring because I want to and do have hobbits. I have liked hobbits so much that I have in fact rebought my hobbit army
after selling them.
After selling them to Mare. And like another person said, they liked War and Rohan because it was the first thing they got because that's what they were after. They were playing those armies. Like, there isn't a clear answer. People buy all for different reasons. It's just I kind of feel like not actually that many people are really after competitive stuff, and I think that's like the comments demonstrate that people are all after it for different reasons. And I think that's why we all think, even though, you know, Mayor's quite an avid tournament goer, but he doesn't like Defense of the North. And I think for me, it's because secretly what we want is we want to live vicariously, and we want the theme, and we want to think about having the nice fluffy book. We're not actually after the super hardcore competitive Legendary Legions. Because if it was just about rules, then Defense of the North would be everyone's favourite if it was just about the most competitive.
But then Defense of the North did really well in the people's voting thing.
It did, and I suspect that that's because a lot of people who are after really competitive things, and there's probably an element of it being new and fresh on people's minds, they would have voted for it. But if you actually look at the percentage, whilst it is very high, only 21% of people think that that was the best one.
Are we going to bother trying to produce an overall ranking, or is it not worthwhile?
I think because I don't know. I think OT is slowly converting me that in a vacuum scouring. I feel like if I was introducing someone to a game, to this game, obviously, and
a different game,
a general game.
If you were introducing someone to Kill Team, you would have fired
scouring.
Scouring is up there because you can take them through the campaign. The miniatures are nice to paint. Although potentially expensive to start, you'll end up with like a fairly sizable army if you wanted to. It's not a very complete, there's not really much magic going on or any cavalry or anything particularly complicated, and it could just be a really nice book to go through. And all of it is useful in that vacuum. Whether that the fact it has to kind of be in a vacuum for the most part, other than the legions making them slightly better for competitive play, even though they don't really do a good job at that. Whether that can justify them coming down from first, potentially, I don't think I can argue for it being first. I personally have a massive bias towards War in Rohan, which I'm happy to admit is not how everyone's going to see it. I can see why people might like Gondor at War just as much as War in Rohan, because they reflect very much similar themes. So I'm happy for War in Rohan to come down. I don't think Scouring can be at the top, which unfortunately means Quest of the Ringbearer, as you two have it quite high. I would say it would have to be Quest of the Ringbearer, followed by Scouring, followed by War in Rohan, but based on
I think what I would say, if I was to get down from my high horse of why people should love Scouring and the kind of slightly meta reason why people enjoy wargaming that I've been ranting about, if I'm looking at this in a kind of which book provides the most shiz for the game in general, then I would probably say War in Rohan is going to slightly edge Quest. You get so many
reveal, actually, do I take that back? I don't know.
So many new profiles for quite a few armies. Essentially a new army, because I think Dunland is distinct enough. And I think there is enough there that Two Towers is so beloved. I don't think you're going to get many Lord of the Ring fans who wouldn't at one point want to collect either Uruk-hai or Rohan, which I think slightly edges it above Quest for me, just because I think Quest is so narrative focused, so that it does kind of rule out. So if we're going by what favors the most people, I think War's slightly better. I think as a book to read, though, although I don't own it, I think it is something I am eventually going to get. I just haven't got round to it because I'd rather spend my money on Hobbits, apparently. I think Quest is the one that I'm most excited to actually just like read.
Yeah.
So they've all got things going for them, haven't they?
We could just have a 3-way tie. It's fine.
Yeah.
Three in first place, and then 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Yeah, perfect.
It turns out that you can have a conversation with someone and just agree that they're right in their own way, and you don't have to take.
However, who's editing this one?
Are you just going to rip out my very nice statement at the end, which is meant to, be kind of a healing comment and just make me look like a raging nerd who likes scouring? Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so there's no objective answer.
No, I reckon we just put them all in joint first.
I reckon we
all 6 of them
have a really clickbaity title saying the objective best and make people listen to all of this just to get to this.
And then we swap to a slide where it's 3 in first place.
Yeah, good.
Perfect.
Should we quickly cover news?
Yeah, we can't make up our minds. That's news.
Although not news to anyone else.
They have officially announced in the end of a slightly bizarre post about Isengard that there's going to be a new terrain piece for the kind of Amon Hen woodlands bit that they've got, the severed stone head.
Is that why they had that article?
Because the article didn't add anything else, did it?
I think that they had the article because I think that they have to do a monthly Lord of the Rings article.
Keep us happy.
I think that if they don't have anything to actually say, they then pump out some generic waffle about either painting or playing an army, which the intern writes.
Clearly.
And I think
that person's never played Isengard. I'm sorry. What the fuck?
I think that they felt like the terrain piece probably didn't warrant its own article.
What, just the
picture? No, well, I'm not sure the article warranted itself, to be honest.
But I think both things together were more warranted than if they were individually done, if that makes sense.
It was crap, though. That Isengard article was crap.
Yeah, the terrain piece was quite cool. As Mares pointed out, there you can quite easily find a severed head.
Just on the ground.
There's fucking loads of them.
He was able to produce a severed head at very short notice, and police have been informed, don't worry.
A worryingly short amount of time.
I'm sorry, but also, what is this 800-point list? It's also not even 800 points. The other one's a good 5 points off, and they could have just swapped some bloody warriors for some berserkers and made up for that. Yeah. Well, this second list, 800 points, Saruman on horse with Grima. Okay, fair start. 3 berserkers, 3 warriors with shield, 8 with pike, 1 with banner. Okay, that's all fine. Then warbands 2 and 3, we've got fucking Malher in warband 2. Probably the 4th in line for being a good named captain, with 2 berserkers, 5 warriors with shield, 5 with pike, and 1 Crabane randomly in there.
Yeah.
And then we've got Vrasku with 12 Uruk-hai warriors with pike, not even with crossbow. There's just 12 fucking pikemen in a warband.
Read the article. It's a good idea to get in as many crossbows as you can. And neither of the list have any crossbows.
Do you think it's a typo? I think that what's happened there is one of the schmucks on the community team copy pasted the.
It's not a typo because it says 120 points.
It's pointed right. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's pointed correctly for a pike.
Oh, that's odd then. It feels like it should be a typo.
It does. It does feel like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the only Lord of the Rings news.
I quite like the just quickly the Ammon Head's Fallen Head. I do think it's quite cool.
Yeah.
I imagine it's going to be enormously expensive though because it's Forge World. I may one day get it in order to get free shipping from Forge World though. Just gonna put that out. If it's like 20 quid or something.
If it's 25, that's not ridiculous. But like as you guessed, I think 30 or 35 are much more likely.
I think
I can't believe they're charging that much for something you could literally 3D print for like 2 quid.
I tell you what, though,
you do need a 3D printer though,
and I'm not saying people should do this. They should, but you could probably make your own mold of that very easily.
With what? Your own head?
No, I'm saying if you bought one of these from Forge World and then made a mold, you could just make some out of some, like.
Oh yeah, just spend fucking hours making a mold and pouring resin. That's fine.
You don't need to pour resin. Like that's such a simple thing. You could make a mold just out of just regular whatchamacallit, like that stuff.
Just go on Thingiverse, find the head, which is free, and
find a friend
to your mate who has a 3D printer.
Not everyone has a 3D printer though.
Well, everyone knows someone who knows someone with a printer.
Wow. It's just like one of those like
2 degrees of separation, and you will find someone with a printer. I guarantee it.
It's just like one of those 6 steps to Kevin Bacon thing, where like everyone can.
Well, literally anyone who's gone to a tournament with me ever knows someone who has a 3D printer. So
I'm not sure they can message you out the blue and just be like, print me off a head.
They could, because it's my business.
Do they really know you though? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, do they know the depths of my soul? Probably not.
Do they know you?
Fucking get away from the microphone, you fucking creep. Jesus.
Sorry, I forgot that my microphone was attached to my headphones.
The fucking leveling for this is going to be all out of whack now.
I was wrapping the headphone cord around my finger.
Okay. Can we finish up so I can go?
No. Is there any other news that we need to talk about? No.
There's some 40k shit, so no.
Oh yeah, the lion. OT, are you buying the lion for £65?
I've ordered 2 just in case one arrives damaged. You can't be too careful.
Brilliant.
£30 well spent.
That can be the cold open.
Right. Thanks for listening, everyone. OT has to go.
Spend time with his family, I guess.
Oh, what a nerd.
Rather than listen to this, which has so much value and insight.
It really does. Quick rating of the episode out of 10, OT?
69.
69, Mayor?
Nice. Well, I give it a 6.9. It's out of 10, you idiot.
Very good. I'm going to rate this episode...
He's meant to be a mathematician.
And I'm going to rate this episode a 5.3.
Wow.
Not our best.
It's quite harsh.
It had its moments.
That can be the cold open.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Bye, Craig. Have a lovely time wherever you go, you big creep.
I'll do the outro. It's goodbye from me. Bye, everyone. It's goodbye from Onod.
Oh, goodbye, everyone. Bye, Craig.
And it's goodbye from OT.
Bye, everybody.
Ding that bell.
Subscribe.
It's up to you.
Bye.